Mr. Louis Ng.
Sir, we've been progressively expanding the list of smoke-free places in Singapore, moving step by step towards our vision of prohibiting smoking in all public places. I understand that NEA's goal is to move the policy from a prohibitive list to a positive list, which states places where smoking is allowed. This bill is a step in that direction, and I stand in full support of it. As a former smoker who smoked for 17 years, I'm passionate about fighting against the dangers of smoking. As a father, I'm now doing all I can to protect my 3 daughters against the harmful effects of second-hand smoke. 85 to 90% of smoke in every cigarette ends up as second-hand smoke, and there is no risk-free level of exposure to second-hand smoke. The World Health Organization has reported that second-hand smoke contains at least 60 cancer-causing chemicals. Those who are exposed to second-hand smoke face similar health risks as a smoker. These include eye, nose and throat irritations, respiratory tract infections, heart diseases and cancers. Children and pregnant women who are particularly susceptible to the effects of second-hand smoke. Further, children of smokers are more likely to pick up smoking themselves. So I'm in strong support of this bill, and my only hope is that we can do more. We're now doing a lot to protect people from second-hand smoke in public areas, but the concern which Engineer Dr. Lee Bee-Hua has just mentioned is that has been raised also previously in this House is what are we doing to protect people from second-hand smoke in their own homes? It would seem at odds to protect people from second-hand smoke in the public areas where they spend less time and not protect them at home when they spend more time. Many of my residents complain about being affected by second-hand smoke when their neighbours smoke at their windows or balconies. As HDB units are close to each other, what happens next door inadvertently affects neighbours. For those who live next to or above chain smokers, the problem can be very acute. Imagine being exposed to and having to tolerate second-hand smoke from your neighbours every day for years, with the only reprieve being moving out altogether. This is the reality faced by some of my residents, which I'm sure is shared by many others. I understand that the Act currently covers smoking in private vehicles, in cases where windows are not wound up and smoke is expelled into smoking prohibited places. I understand that it also covers any areas within 5 meters of windows, exits and entrances to buildings where smoking is prohibited. These restrictions are based on the logic that cigarette smoke can be expelled up to 5 meters away. As such, applying the same logic, can the law be extended to prohibit smoking in private homes where the smoker is smoking at a window or door within 5 meters of the neighbour's windows and doors? This might not be the perfect solution, but my hope is that the Ministry studies this issue further, does a public consultation about it and tries to find a middle ground. I appreciate that SMS reply will be what she said previously, that, quote, smoking within residential premises in the home, in private space, is beyond the jurisdiction of the government, end of quote. But we do have regulations that cover what you do in your own home, in your own private space. For example, we have regulations that prohibit making excessive noise in your own house. We have regulations saying you can't be naked in your own house. Under Section 27A of the Miscellaneous Offences, Public Order and Nuisance Act, a person cannot be naked in a private space while being exposed to public view. I also want to add that it was reported just last month that the US implemented a ban on smoking inside public housing to improve indoor air quality, to reduce residents' exposure to second-hand smoke, and to help smokers be more successful at quitting. According to the nationwide survey they conducted, people who lived in homes where smoking was prohibited were 60% more likely to quit smoking for at least 30 days as compared to people without this prohibition. Next. So in a Facebook comment, Mr. Loh shared with me the very common experience of pedestrians forced to breathe in second-hand smoke when they walk behind smokers who smoke while on the move. Chiyoda-ku City in Tokyo has banned smoking while walking. New York City is now also considering a bill that would similarly prohibit people from smoking while walking on sidewalks. Would the ministry consider a ban on smoking while walking, which would stamp out the unpleasant situation highlighted by Mr. Loh that many of us have faced? Such a ban could be piloted on major streets with heavy pedestrian footfall, such as those in the Central Business District and the Civic District. Further, earlier this year, SMS Amy Kors shared that the ministry is exploring the feasibility of expanding the designated smoking area scheme first implemented in Orchard Road to other parts of Singapore. And SMS mentioned this in her opening speech. Can the ministry provide more updates on this review and share if there are plans to scale up the scheme? Can I also ask what would be the guidelines used in determining the suitability of locating a smoking facility under Section 3B? This would be very important. I raise this as some of the current eateries where there is a designated smoking area, it really doesn't matter where you sit, as you will get the second-hand smoke whether you are in a designated smoking area or not. Lastly, I refer to the new Section 4A, which provides authorized officers with certain powers of entry. More specifically, to ascertain if a place has contravened the acts, officers are able to enter, inspect, and search places, seize documents or materials, take possession of belonging and a photograph or film without a warrant. Maximum fine of $2,000 is imposed on first offenders and $5,000 on repeat offenders who obstruct authorized officers while exercising these powers. While some powers of entry are necessary for effective enforcement and to achieve better outcomes for people affected by second-hand smoke, the scope of powers and maximum fine imposed might appear to some to be excessive. Further, these powers may be exercised by non-uniformed public officers, as with many of the other bills passed recently. I understand the need to empower non-uniformed public officers, in this case any officers, to help with enforcement. Nonetheless, this has to be balanced against privacy concerns, and I would like to ask what measures will be in place to prevent the abuse of such broad powers. So notwithstanding these comments, I stand in full support of this bill as it signals a strong resolve by the government to protect citizens against second-hand smoke. It is a firm step towards our vision of a smoke-free lifestyle in Singapore.